The Indian Navy has been hurting because of resource constraints. So it was indeed a red letter day when recently the new INS Vikrant was launched in Kochi. On the same day, the Prime Minister unveiled the Indian Navy's new flag, which was based on the royal seal of Shivaji. Shivaji, the PM declared, had built the Navy on the strength of its sea power. And this is something that had scared the European colonialists. Actually, Shivaji's Navy never really made an effort to challenge the Europeans in the high seas. They were the masters of coastal defense, where they were familiar with the creeks and bays, and their ships with a shallower draft could challenge the heavier European ships. As the historian B.K. Apte has noted, the English Navy was superior to the Maratha Navy in every way. The Marathas understood their limitations and capabilities, and so they applied the tactics they had used on land, on the sea, which is of hit and run. And as I noted, they were familiar with the local terrain, with the local creeks and bays, and they were able to stand off the European invaders on several occasions. And their enemies were not just the Mughals, meaning during Shivaji's time, the enemies were not just the Mughals, but also the Siddhis, who had a dominant position in the Konkan coast to the south of Maharashtra. At the time, the British were already ensconced in Bombay, and Shivaji strategically occupied two islands nearby called Kandheri and Underi. When he began to fortify these islands, the British were alarmed, and they attempted to establish a blockade of Shivaji's navy. After months of skirmishing and actual battles, the Marathas prevailed. The British were forced to call off their blockade, and the issue was resolved through negotiations, which resulted in a treaty which was signed in January of 1860. The great Chhatrapati Shivaji was the first modern leader of an Indian military. The reason for this is that he paid them out of the central treasury instead of having this mansabdars and so on. The second reason was that he was resolutely secular in his outlook. He recruited people from all communities, including Muslims. There was something like a dozen Muslim commanders in his forces. In fact, the battles around Kandheri, his top admiral was Daulat Khan. At best, the Maratha Navy or Shivaji's Navy, Shivaji, can be called the father of the Indian Coast Guard. And Modi did stretch issues a bit when he said that he was the father of the Indian Navy. If you are really looking for a father of the Indian Navy, you ought to consider the exploits of our greatest maritime commander, Rajendra Chola, I think the second king of the Chola dynasty. He took his navies across to Southeast Asia, conquered the great kingdom of Srivijaya, and established Indian hegemony in Indochina, Indonesia, Malaysia, Malacca Straits, and that region. See, the whole point of a navy, as against a coast guard, is that a navy is an offensive weapon, not a defensive one. Actually, the Indian Navy originated from the British Navy, from the same British Navy that had skirmished with Shivaji around Kandheri Island. In 1798, this was designated as the Bombay Marine. Subsequently, it became the Indian Navy and then the Royal Indian Navy, and it was used by the British to establish its supremacy throughout the Indian Ocean. There is nothing unusual here. After all, the Indian Army boasts some of its best battalions, see their lineage from the forces that were raised by the British as far back as the 18th century. And these today are very distinguished units of the Indian Army. Like it or not, you cannot change history. Like Modi ji, when he called Shivaji the father of the Indian Navy and forgot completely about Rajendra Chola. He was not even mentioned in the speech. At the end of the day, it was a so-called Indian army that helped the British to conquer India. That is because Indian kings fought against other Indian kings and often with the aid of the British. and eventually the British emerged supreme. So for Indians to somehow distinguish between Indians' army and the British army is somewhat invidious. So the Indians actually helped the British to come to power. There's nothing unusual in this. The Sangh Parivar, for example, opposed the national movement and supported the British in the 1930s when the national movement gathered strength. For Modi to claim that we have overthrown the colonial yoke now with the launch of the Vikrant and the new flag is, well, simply a Modiism. It just simply stretches or completely upturns the truth in every way. But what is more disturbing is that the Indian Navy officialdom has gone along with him on this, which is where he was really making a very political statement.